Welcome to What Nobody Tells You. I'm your host, James Ferrigno. Join me while we explore the truths most people never hear. Welcome to What Nobody Tells You. I'm your host, James Ferrigno, and today we're going to be talking about emotions. Emotions are something that are fundamentally important to everything in our life. All of our goals, all of our desires, all of our dreams, all of our experiences, all of our relationships, our level of abundance, our level of wealth, our level of happiness are all dependent on emotions. So they really are the fundamental thing. So what are emotions anyway? Emotions are energy flowing through your body at a particular kilohertz frequency. Now, each emotion can be measured in a kilohertz frequency, and there are machines that can measure this. And the frequency will become higher and higher. If you ever heard someone say I'm high frequency or high vibration or low vibration, that's what they're referring to, is that the higher vibration, the higher frequency, the higher kilohertz frequency of an emotion, generally the more positive the experience. So let's go back to David Hawkins, who developed this schedule. At the bottom, at 20 kilohertz frequency, is shame, then guilt, then apathy, then grief, then fear. And fear is at 100, and then you go through anger and pride and courage, and something happens around 200 at courage. Once you get to courage, you start to be able to control your own destiny, to make things happen in your life. And then up around 300, you become more willing and things change more quickly. And 350, you have acceptance, and then things can get even better in your life. 600 is peace. We all experience most of these emotions at one time or another. Generally, when we place ourselves on this, we're talking about where we usually are. Like, where's our most common place to land? And, how are most of our hours spent? And that's something that you want to look at. So if you spend most of your time in fear, that's probably something you want to examine. If we're down in apathy and guilt and shame all the time, it makes it kind of impossible for us to really make anything of our life or really get anywhere or have any happiness or anything. So, but like I said, we all move around. We experience joy and peace and acceptance at different times in our life, regardless. I will say that there's a tendency for most people in modern society to be somewhere at the lower end of that, hang out in apathy, grief, and fear, thus people having depression and anxiety a lot, which is down at that end. And, you can't accomplish a lot, which is why people want to be cured of that. Where you are in this in general, and even specifically in the moment, can be very valuable and very helpful to know. It's hard to move forward when you don't know where you are. You have to know where you're starting from. And you can use different techniques like emotional acceptance, emotional release. There's a lot of different names for it to be able to move through that. Now, you will naturally kind of bounce around and move through it. People who meditate can move through it. People who have a daily practice, people who do Qigong or yoga can possibly move through it. It depends on how you do these things. The same thing with the emotional release techniques. I mean, there's a lot to how you do it. Our society, most societies in the world, spend a lot of time focusing on accumulating wealth, on success, on ideas, on mindset, on logic, on things that are not the emotions. And yet all of what we're supposed to get with these things can only be gotten to with emotions. In a lot of cases, the thing that you're trying to get to is some sort of happiness or love or peace. And that in itself is an emotion. So for the most part, there's a little complexity with some of those just because of the English language and the way we use words. The word love, for instance, can be more than one thing. It can be an emotion, but it can also be a broader type of energy, which we won't go into here. But it can really benefit you to focus on your emotions and to know where you're at. So if you're not paying attention to your emotions, if you think they're not important, if you're not focusing on them, if you're not having that level of awareness, then you can change things, and you can kind of will yourself through things, and things can change, and things can just change on their own, of course. And you can get yourself to push yourself through things, but usually what happens, if you will yourself up to some level of success, it won't be sustainable. You'll usually fall back down again. You'll find the person, and then the relationship will go sour, or you'll be really successful and you'll build this company, and then it'll all fall apart. To maintain these things, you have the level of emotional state to be able to maintain it. It's not just a factor, it is the thing that we're trying to get to. Like I said, like if we're trying to find love, well, that is one of the emotions. By definition, emotion is what we're trying to get to. And same thing with peace or contentment. It's like we're trying to get to an emotional state. That's the whole goal. And to start with, if you're not doing a daily practice and you don't want to do a daily practice, which is one of the main ways that people reach peace and enlightenment and all of these things, if you can find one of those, if you want to do one of those, that can be really helpful. So if you want to improve, if you want to have a level of success, if you want to have abundance, then the first thing to do is just expand your awareness and be aware of your emotions, just to track them throughout the day. You can do a journal and write down, I was feeling this way in the morning, I was feeling this way when this happened, and just keep track of your emotions. Because I know a lot of us don't. I find that men often are not noticing how they feel all the time. How you feel is what emotion are you having right now? What emotion is flowing through you? And I remember myself when I was young, in my early 20s, that I was a bit shut down. I didn't really know what emotion I was feeling. And this isn't to say I didn't have the emotions, but just didn't have the experience to be connected up with them. I wasn't really taught what they were. Words were bandied about, but no one ever, there was no class on it. No one ever sat me down and said, oh, when you feel this way, this is fear. When you feel this way, this is anxiety. This is a low level of fear. This is excitement. This is, there was no explanation of that anywhere, ever. And I knew some things. I could tell when people were angry. If someone was crying, I could tell they were sad. But unless it was really extreme like that, I couldn't really tell. And I remember someone asked me, are you happy? And I stopped and thought about it for a minute and said, you know what? I don't know. I don't know if I've ever been happy. And I really wasn't sure, how often I'd even been sad either. I would later learn that I was mildly depressed, mildly anxious, kind of at the same time. And, moving back and forth between depressed and anxious. And there was definitely some shame and guilt mixed in there. But it took a long time. It took years to be able to sort out what I was feeling, because you really just don't learn it. It just takes time to learn. This is one of the most important things that people could learn to be able to change their lives for the better, to become more happy, more abundant, more successful, to achieve your goals, your dreams, whatever it is to be able to be aware of your emotions. If you're not now able to tell what you're feeling right now, and if someone asks you how you're feeling and you say okay or fine, well, that's not really an answer. You need to be able to name the emotion. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling a little sad. I'm feeling a little bit apprehensive. I'm feeling a little bit hopeful, whatever it is. And if you can't do that, then, well, lucky you're here. So I'm going to walk you through some of the ways that you can start to learn to do that and start to make progress with things, because it is really important to do work and to do external things to change your life and to better yourself and to be able to be successful and accomplished. However, a big part of that is this. So you have to do the outside action in the world, but at the same time, there's a need to be aware of your emotions and to be able to navigate this territory so that you can expand your awareness and then you know where you are. And I'm not saying without doing this you can't be successful, but to maintain it and certainly to have love and happiness, you do need to be aware of these things. Now, a lot of people are already aware of them. I mean, they don't, really need to be listening to this part of what I'm saying. But for many of us, weren't raised with the education and don't have the ability to be able to identify all our emotions at every moment. And it's a great skill to have. So I remember when I first started to learn it, it was a bit of a road. I really had to sit down and think, what am I feeling right now? And it helped to look at the Hawkins scale. You can just Google it, the Hawkins emotional scale. It'll bring up all these little graphics. I like to use a simple one, that just lists the emotions and the kilohertz frequency. There's ones that are really complicated and have all these different things. You don't need that right now. But just a simple list of the emotions. And take some time to sit down, if you need to. This is if you ever get to the point where you don't know what emotion you're feeling. You could sit down and look at the scale and just look at the different emotions and try and guess which one you might be feeling. And then when you think you might know, then kind of lean into that and pay attention to your inner self. And you could literally just pay attention to the inside of your body and see, okay, what am I feeling? And another thing that we're not always told about emotions is that essentially they are a feeling in your body. There's a sensation somewhere in your body. So that's how you know that they're there. I mean, if it's just a total mystery, like what emotion, what is that? So look for a feeling in your body somewhere. And often you'll get them in the chest or the stomach. You can feel love here. You can feel fear here, but also in your gut, you can feel fear. You can also feel confidence in your gut. I will often get, if I'm having fear, a tightening in the throat, dryness in the mouth, but you'll feel something in your body. Look at the scale, and that'll help you trace what emotion you're feeling. And then it's really just practice from there. It's like throughout the day, how am I feeling? And it also is good to talk to people about it, just to kind of keep it in the mix so that it's not always just you having to pay attention to things and having to work on this and put aside time to pay attention to your emotions. You want to do that all the time. But just kind of casually throughout the day, pay attention. And if there's someone you can talk to about it that's interested in these things, a lot of people are. A lot of women are interested in emotions and how people are feeling. Talk to them about it. And I'm not saying all people, but there are definitely people out there that have an interest in this. And they'll be happy to talk about it because they're interested in it. Some of that will help because then you're having a conversation and you're not having to just sit down and do it by yourself. But you can do it by yourself as well. at first just start to be aware of it. And eventually what you'll see is that you can have more than one emotion at a time. You can have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 all at the same time. And there's a bit of a skill level to being able to sort those out and figure out what you're feeling. And they can be seemingly opposites. I know that I often can be just joyfully excited and a bit sad and depressed at the same time. And they kind of go together. And this, for me anyway, this world has a lot of sadness in it, but it also has a lot of joy in it. And often you can experience both at the same time just by nature of the world. And I find that to be common for me. It may not be for you. So first, just raise your awareness, get a copy of the Hawkins scale, look at it on your phone or your computer. I suggest a simplified one. There's a lot of different images out there, but the simplified ones are easier to look at, in my opinion. Let's take a look at the Hawkins scale. I know I mentioned it earlier. I'm going to show a copy of it on the screen. If you're watching this on video, you'll be able to see that. If not, I will try and put a link to it in there, but I'm going to describe it verbally as well if you're listening to this on audio. So the scale begins with apathy, and it's a scale of the emotions by kilohertz frequency from the bottom, the lowest frequency, to the highest frequency. And I will put this up on the screen right now if you can see it visually. And here we are. This is the Hawkins scale, if you can see that. So there are colored bars representing, coloring each emotion. And it begins with apathy is the lowest emotion, then grief, fear. On this chart, it says lust. It's in Hawkins' book, it's called desire. So apathy, grief, fear, desire, anger, pride, courage, acceptance, peace. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this scale first, and then we'll go into a little more detail of the different emotions and how to move from one to the other. So these, as I said, are in kilohertz frequency from lowest to highest, and apathy is the lowest. Now, we're not saying that highest is necessarily best or there's something wrong with any of them. These are emotions. They're all objectively neutral, so that when you feel an emotion, there's nothing bad or wrong about that emotion. It simply is an energy traveling through your body. Now, there are some states that are more desired, of course. So we want to be in more desired states because not only are they more pleasurable, but they can bring the ability to accomplish things, the ability to be successful, the ability to in both society and in personal relationships, and to be happier. We begin with apathy. On this chart that I'm looking at, underneath the name of the emotion, there are a number of words that describe that emotion. Under apathy is bored, can't win, cold, cut off, dead, defeated, depressed, demoralized. Depressed, I think, is something that most of us know what that is, or at least have some idea what that is, and that's under apathy. So usually people will identify the apathy as depressed. Despair, disillusionment, doomed, failure, futile, giving up, hopeless, I don't care, I don't count, lazy, listless, loser, negative. One important thing is the I can't, because there's something going on here in apathy. I can't versus I won't. Often when people are in apathy, they will say, I can't do something. Now, you can be in apathy around a particular issue. So it could just be around public speaking, or traveling to a foreign country, or dating, or sexuality, or whatever it is. You can just have apathy in that one area. It's rare, but some people can have apathy in every area, and then that's when they're very depressed. A good sign is if you catch yourself saying, I can't about things, then that is a good sign that you're in apathy. So there are some things that people obviously can't do, but just being able to identify that and then realizing, say, public speaking, for instance, saying, I can't do that. Well, unless you don't have vocal cords or are incapable of speaking, it's not that you can't, it's that you won't. So this is true most of the time that people say they can't. What they're really saying is they won't. But I can't is disempowering. And in this way, you're giving away your authority, you're giving away your strength, your freedom, your ability to do things. And if you say, I won't, you're still not doing the thing. You're still telling people that you're not going to do it, but you have brought your own power back to yourself. In I won't, you're making the choice. You're making the decision. You are empowered. When you say I can't, you are disempowered. You're weakening yourself. And just changing from I can't to I won't status can start to lift you out of apathy. Because as soon as you do that, you're having the emotion of pride or courage. So you're really jumping up the scale there by going to I won't. So that can be a really useful thing to do. And then the next lowest thing on the scale is grief. If only this hadn't happened, nothing helps. Please someone help me. Which the please someone help me does delineate it from apathy. And apathy, people will say or think, no one can help me. There's no way out of this. It's never going to work. I'm never going to get over this. What's the point? It's doomed. In grief, people might ask someone else for help. They might beg, please, please help me. So that delineates the two. I'll read the list of words under grief. Abandoned, abused, accused, anguished, ashamed, betrayed, cheated, despairing, disappointed, distraught, embarrassed, forgotten, guilty, heartbroken, lost, melancholy. We're generally in a state of grief when we lose something. A person, even a concept, a belief, a worldview, an object. There's often some kind of loss in there. And we have an internal mechanism to get through grief, which is crying. And this is actually a very helpful and useful tool because we have this built-in mechanism to get us through grief. And grief is a short-term emotion, not that people aren't stuck with it for their whole lives, because people are. But if we can uncover the grief, if we can get to it and allow the crying to surface, allow the feeling of the grief to surface, it's not always crying, but usually that is what will allow us to move through it quickly. It doesn't last long. So we get to it, we cry, we move through it, and it doesn't last long compared to the other emotions. Because of this built-in mechanism of crying, we are able to generally get through it fairly quickly by comparison. Here's the thing with emotions. The emotion comes up, and if it's a loss, it can get triggered again because that same loss is still there. So it can take several times or many times of it coming up. But if we can take advantage of this mechanism once the crying comes up and go through that several times, that will usually get us through the grief, and then we can move to the next level, which is fear. And now fear, we're getting to a higher level of kilohertz frequency here, so it's a higher energy state, and things are starting to move more quickly than they did in apathy and grief. So fear can range from mild unease to anxiety to full-blown paranoia. So there's a wide spectrum of fear. And often, very often, especially if it's a lower level of unease, we can not be aware of it. So we're experiencing fear but aren't aware of it. I mean, this is true of all the emotions, but particularly with this one. And often with fear, it has anger underneath it. often the fear is coming because it's a fear of perceived retribution. So we want to get angry, but we're afraid that if we get angry, there will be consequences that we don't want, that we're afraid of. So we'll go straight into the fear and skip the anger. Also with fear, it has fearing the fear itself. So it can create this loop that the other emotions don't really have. So when you can actually be afraid of feeling fear. So when you're feeling the fear, it'll really amplify it. And then you can go into this loop where the fear can get bigger and bigger. So when we can just look at the fear, here's the first step to dealing with this, is looking at the fear and seeing that it's just fear. And admitting and accepting that we're afraid. People get the anxiety and the attacks because they're pushing the fear down and not wanting to be aware of it. And even if you're unaware of it, it's going to come up. It's a very high energy emotion. It's going to come up at some point. So then it's just being restricted, and it's like a boiling pot. And you're just increasing the pressure the longer you hold it until it explodes. So the first step is to be aware that you're afraid, and then the second step is to accept it. To accept, I'm afraid. I'm simply afraid. It's an emotion. I am feeling the emotion of fear. That is what I am feeling. So once you can do that, then you can dispense with the fear of the fear. And you're also not holding it in, so it's not the boiling pot anymore, and it's not the fear of the fear, so you can get out of that loop. Then all that's happening is you're feeling some fear. And when you accept that, you can just go about your life. You don't even have to try to get rid of it. You just continue to do the things you were doing, but do them while you're afraid. This is the greatest skill to have, is just to be able to, if you're afraid in a certain circumstance, used to run into this with dating. People are afraid of dates, afraid of, approaching or talking to someone they want to date. You just do it anyway, and just do it when you're afraid. And if you're afraid of public speaking, you just get up and speak anyway, and you speak while you're afraid. And eventually, your fear will become less and less and less. It may never completely disappear, but while you're in that high intensity situation, but it really won't bother you, and it won't stop you from doing anything once you do it enough times. So it's a great tactic to be able to let yourself feel it, admit that you're having it, understand that that's all that's happening, and then move forward. And that's the thing to do with fear. So the next up is desire or lust, which is abandon, anticipation, can't wait, compulsive, craving, demanding, devious, driven, envy. So it does have that high energy kind of frenzy to it that fear has, but it's in a wanting space. So it really is a wanting. And one truth of wanting is that when we want something really, really bad, especially a big thing, it makes it far less likely that we're going to get it. So there's too much focus on it. So ideally, we have a goal that we have in mind, and it is something that is desired, but we try not to emotionally attach to it. So remember, this is a list of the emotions. So it's okay to have a goal. Of course, it's good. It's necessary to have goals and to have things that you would like to achieve. But when you attach your emotion to it, that achievement becomes less likely. Not impossible. It could still happen, but it becomes less likely, tends to take, even if it does happen, it takes longer and it's more difficult. So attaching to things, when they talk about Zen attachment, that's what they're talking about, is attaching to wanting of things, which doesn't mean you don't ever want things in your life and you don't have goals. It just means it's not as productive to attach your emotional state to it. You want your energy around it to be relaxed. And, if it happens, that would be great. If it doesn't, then, I'll do the next thing instead of I have to have this happen. And like I said, that it doesn't guarantee any outcomes either way, but it's much more productive to not have the attachment. You can achieve a lot more. And now the next thing up is anger. So anger, we're getting into even more energy here. So this has a lot of power and energy to it. And this also goes from like mild resentment. You can resent somebody and you can not be aware of that anger, just as with the fear. It can be outside of your awareness. They all can be outside of your awareness, but this is quite common for people to have resentments that they're unaware of, and all the way up to really angry to full-blown rage. And so you can have an outburst. Just as the fear can spiral into a panic attack, the anger can spiral into violence at its worst. Now, people can accomplish things with anger. It can be used to create because there's a lot of energy that can be focused, but not with abandon. It would be low-level anger. You're kind of moving from one place to another. That can be done, but it's not very efficient. But it does work. Most people in society tend to, when someone says, I'm on this chart, I'm usually in anger or fear, but it's just, we all move around this chart all the time and feel all these different things at one time in our life, or maybe throughout even one day. But there are areas where some of us tend to be most of the time. And the average person is really around somewhere between apathy and anger most of the time. Really, most people live their lives in grief and fear. And that seems to be the area where most people are most of the time. Not that they aren't in the other places other times, but that's definitely a popular area to be, is grief and fear. So people that are in anger have an advantage over those people, and they can get things done. Things can actually be accomplished here. I mean, the desire aspect, it's mostly spinning your wheels, so not a lot gets done there if you were exclusively in that state. But things can get done with anger. So because it has a lot of energy to it. But also, it's dangerous. And other people don't like it. So, for the most part. The next thing up the scale is pride. The majority, I would say, of really successful people tend to be in pride. And that's just a truth of the world. Now, not all, but more than not are in pride. Pride has some weaknesses to it. I'll read some of the words here. Pride is aloof, arrogant, bigoted, boastful, bored, clever, complacent, contemptuous, critical, disdain, dogmatic, holier than thou, hypocritical, icy, isolated, judgmental, know-it-all, opinionated, overbearing, pious, prejudice. So most of this stuff is not really positive stuff, right? But in that state of pride, you can also accomplish things. Most successful people are in this state a lot. And you notice that people here are prejudiced and judgmental. So pride is kind of the productive state, the most productive state that surrounds ego, of being egotistical and self-centered. And in pride, you're very susceptible to dropping into anger really easily and to disappointment because you have this confidence that's a false confidence. And I've talked about this before. I think there was an entire episode on confidence. And that's in this pride area. So, and in the pride area, people tend to be attached to things. They emotionally attached to their goals. When you're attached to things, there's a huge potential for loss and suffering, for grief to come up, because people will attach to their possessions. If you think about it, and they will take their inner emotions, their inner state, and attach that emotion to the things they own. So their house, their car, the possessions in their house, their clothing. So now if someone insults their wardrobe, they've insulted them. When you're attached to things, you will call them mine, my car, my shirt, rather than a shirt. I'm going to wear the red shirt. I'm going to wear my red shirt. These are two different ways of saying it. But my shirt, now you're attached to the shirt. If someone takes it, they've taken your shirt. They've taken a part of you emotionally. And you can get very upset if the shirt gets ruined or somebody spills something on it. You can become furious. And people will also attach not only to possessions, but to ideas, beliefs, thoughts. And now, if that idea or thought is questioned, or that belief is questioned, they will become very, very upset, and they're prone to anger, right? So someone in pride is very attached to things, and they could be attached to their own beliefs. And if you question their beliefs, they're also prone to anger. They could easily get into anger and then become aggressive and, have a blow up. So, and it's a very tenuous position to be in, because you're open to a lot of things. If you think about it, if you've attached to all your possessions and your ideas and beliefs as well, now you've spread yourself super thin, so that now, like, the size of the target has become enormous. Before it was just, if you weren't attached to things, it's just someone would have to personally insult you to get you to be upset about it. Now they can criticize any one of the possessions you own, any of your ideas, any of your beliefs. You've just made yourself a gigantic target, and you're now really prone. It's a weakness. You are really prone to getting thrown off, really prone to getting triggered, really prone to getting angry, really prone to experiencing grief or even apathy. So it's a very sensitive, tenuous, place to be in. And people in this area can have a kind of a snobbery. And there are even some people who have the kind of the reverse snobbery of maybe bargain hunting people, that if they get something cheap, they can do that better than other people. And then they attach to that, and it's this kind of a snobbery, the same as maybe a really well-to-do person would have, but a bargain hunting version of that. So all different kinds of people can have pride. And what you can do with this is, in pride, since you're susceptible to anger, since you're very vulnerable to all kinds of attacks, you're open to exploitation and manipulation pretty easily. Because since you're so attached to things, and you can experience, desire and greed really strongly, it's easy for people to swindle you or to get things out of you, or it can be, everyone's different. But people in pride are definitely more susceptible to that. And this prideful stance also creates fear, because you can have this fear that your opinions might be judged by others, that your things might be judged by others. So that's like another level of weakness, even if they aren't. Even if no one is attacking your possessions or criticizing them or being critical, you can have a fear that they might. So what can help with this is going into beginner's mind, just knowing the idea that with beginner's mind, you are open to all possible opinions, and that anything is okay and anything can happen. Things don't have to be a very particular way. You don't have to be attached to your own ideas or beliefs. If you can let those go, if you can do that, it can help move you out of this pride position, this stance of pride, which is very disempowering. So what you can do when you're in pride is you can replace your pride with love or joy. So one way to do this is to just think about things you love when you're experiencing the pride. And instead of attaching to your car, you could think of someone else or something else that you actually love, or you can just love your car rather than be prideful of it and attached to it. Bring up the feeling of love within yourself. Remind yourself of what that feels like. Set your intention to feel that towards your car instead of the pride of ownership. You could have a love of your car instead of a pride of it. You can also bring up joy, so to be happy about it, and Bring up that emotion and see if you can feel that about your car instead of the pride. And that can help to start to get you into a different area. So at the next level, we have courage. So this is the stance of I can. I am capable, I am alive, I am loving, centered, balanced, flexible, and creative. I can let go, which is a really important one. And one of the biggest things with courage is I can have the courage to look at my own emotions, see what they are, and feel them. So anytime you do any of this process, whether it's apathy to peace, anything, any of the emotions there are, as soon as you can stop, be honest with yourself about what emotion you're feeling and be aware of that and feel it, you have just done something courageous, and now you're automatically encouraged, and you've jumped up to almost the end of the chart. So looking at your emotions and doing what I've been talking about on its own brings you into courage. A thing we can do to build courage and confidence is to do this work. One way this manifests is just to think, I do not have to be afraid of my feelings anymore. I can learn how to accept my feelings and be free of them. I am willing to take risks, to let go of old points of view and explore new ones. I am willing to be joyous and to share my joy with others. So that's the difference between pride and courage. One of the many differences is that for courage, we now have an excess of energy and we are generous and can share with other people. And some of the words under courage are adventurous, alert, alive, assured, aware, centered, certain, cheerful, clarity, compassion, competent, confident, creative, daring, decisive, dynamic, eager, enthusiastic, exhilarated, flexible, focused, giving, happy, honorable, humorous, I can, independent, intuitive, integrity, invincible, loving, lucid, motivated. I remember those pretty well because I've read them a lot in my past. So compassion, love. When you have compassion and love and humor and you're happy and giving, when you can be focused and alert and alive, that means you're in courage. And as I said, you can jump to courage just by doing this work. And the work is really just paying attention, like most things. Just simply being aware of what you're feeling and feeling it. That's it. And if you think about it, all the levels up before courage, so apathy, grief, fear, desire, anger, pride, are all about the self. And they're all about gain, about getting something for yourself, even if it's, lack of something, wanting a pain to go away. So we're just in our own little bubble caring only about ourselves. In courage, that's when we start caring about other people. That's when we start giving to other people. And that's when we really start to have energy and power. And this is the thing. This is where you want to be. You want to be in courage. Most people do, because you can accomplish things. When people talk about being happy, I want to be happy, this is what they mean. They mean they want to be in courage or higher. Because then you get abundance. Abundance comes with courage, abundance of abilities, abundance of energy, abundance you can share with other people of all kinds. So, and now this abundance increases at the next levels. So after courage is acceptance, which is abundance, appreciative, balance, beauty, belonging, compassion, considerate, delight, elated, empathy, everything's okay, friendly, gentle, glowing, gracious, harmonious, intuitive, joyful, magnanimous, loving. There's nothing to change, open, playful, radiant. So this is a higher level of courage. It's even a higher frequency where there's just more and stronger versions of what you had in courage. So you have a lot more empathy, a lot more caring for other people. But it also starts to get a little more subtle. It starts to on the outside, on the inside, you still have even more energy, but on the outside, it looks like less. People become more calm, more gentle, more empathetic. And the courageous, there's a little bit more of a Mars energy to it, whereas acceptance has a little bit more of a Venusian energy. And after acceptance is the end, which is peace, the last thing, which is ageless awareness, being boundless, calm, centered, complete, eternal, free, fulfilled, glowing. And this is where people there's nothing to, nowhere to go from there. Nothing else has changed. There aren't even that many words to describe it because it's so uncommon. People do experience peace. We all have some moment when we've experienced that, where everything's perfect, everything's tranquility, and nothing needs to change. The book Letting Go can give you the details of how to change some of these things. I have a copy of it right here. I can show it to you. Letting Go. The Pathway of Surrender, David R. Hawkins. I should tell you, there's another book out there called Letting Go that is not this and not anything about this. So you make sure that it's David R. Hawkins, MD, PhD, and the subtitle is The Pathway of Surrender. And this can be, there are other books, but I find this one is the one I keep going back to and is the most clear with how to go through some of these processes. Then, once you have developed some of that, you can move on to doing some type of emotional release technique. There's a lot of different emotional release techniques out there. My YouTube channel has several for some specific emotions, and one is getting past fear, but fear or anxiety, but also there's some generalized ones you can use for whatever emotion that you're holding on to. Because here's the thing, we don't stop feeling emotions just because we stop noticing them. We continue to feel them, we just are unaware of it. So first we can become aware of our emotions, and the next thing to do is to start doing an emotional release technique. That is, if you're not going to do Qigong or something else like that. What's a little simpler for me with emotional release is anyone can do it. It's not physical, so there's no restriction there. It's also fairly simple, and you can tell if you've made progress or not. You'll feel it kind of right away, so the feedback is immediate. So you know if it's working or not, and you need to alter it in some way. One thing you want to do when you're doing an emotional release technique is that before you do it, you want to make sure that you're not attached to the outcome. Because here's the thing, here's what happens. When we're unaware of our emotions at any moment, or even when we are, humans have built-in skill, which is the ability to repress or suppress our emotions. And to suppress them is to know that your emotion is there, to feel it, and then push it aside, push it away. The other is when that becomes automated, and then you will push it away before you've become consciously aware of it. So it'll start to come up, and then your automatic mechanism will kick in and repress it, and it will be never in your awareness. So that's a tricky one, because you never knew that anything happened. But suppression, at least you're aware that that's happening. So that's something that's good to pay attention. If you start to feel something and then you notice yourself push it down. And enough attention there, you can sometimes begin to see some of the things that you've been repressing. You can't, by definition, be aware of the repression, but you can take a guess that it's operating underneath. So you want to be not attached to the outcome. You want to be not trying to do it to change, which is, I understand, kind of a catch-20. When you attach to something, like this is the actual problem to begin with, is that when we bury emotions, whether it's suppressing or repressing, we've become attached to them. So we think we're getting rid of them, but it's actually the opposite. We're attaching to it and holding on to it and then burying it somewhere in ourselves. So that energy does not just disappear. It stays in your body. And your field. So you didn't get rid of that emotion. All you did was store it, like storing it in a battery. And it's not healthy for your body or anything else. when we're unhealthily storing all these things, we're attaching to them. And then when you attach to something, there's definitely a negative connotation here. Say you want something, and then you try to get it. But when you attach to it, the same way that you attach to the emotions that you're burying, it makes it more difficult to achieve. The idea is to not attach to the outcome, because if you attach to the outcome, then you're really just burying more emotion around it. So you're doing the opposite thing that you're trying to do. You can still have goals, but you just want to have the goal and be as little attached to it as you can. Like, well, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I'm just going to work at it and hopefully it'll all work out. Some people are just naturally like that, are kind of relaxed and lighthearted about things. Eh. Some people behave that way and aren't really that way. They may seem to be that way, but aren't. But some people actually are. But then they'll tend to achieve a lot because they're not really attached to the outcomes. It's even more important here. When you're attempting to release an emotion, if you attach to it, then you can't release it, right? You're doing the opposite. You're holding on to it, so you'll never release it. And perhaps release is not the best word. It's more, I would say the more important part of it is to accept it and experience it. And, that's like the first stage in releasing, but I would say it's the most important part. Really, what we're trying to do is to feel the emotion. Because when you're suppressing it or repressing it, it's, so you don't feel it. You're going back and feeling the emotions that you didn't feel in the past. So there are two different ways that you can use the emotional release, emotional freedom techniques. And one is to, in the moment, experience that emotion rather than suppressing it. And the other is to go back and experience emotions that you've buried already. And, go through the backlog. And you can approach it in either of these ways. You can do both of those things. And really, that's the most important part, I would say, is to experience the emotion, to feel it. What we don't want, though, is for our thoughts. Now, thoughts and emotions are interesting things. Each thought has an emotion attached to it. Most emotions have thoughts attached to them, or they can. And say we're experiencing fear, for instance, because this can happen a lot with fear, anxiety, any aspect of fear, is that we're experiencing it and we're feeling it. And the reason we don't want to feel it is because it feels so bad, right? But then when we feel it, we keep feeling it and feeling it. And what happens is really emotions are temporary. Emotions are like the weather. They just float on by like clouds. And they don't last that long. 15 seconds, a minute, 3 minutes. I mean, the longest emotion you're ever really going to feel in a normal day is, a minute, maybe 2 minutes. What happens is your thoughts will reinitiate them. So you feel the emotion for the normal 15 seconds, 30 seconds, and then you have another thought, and that thought will create that emotion again. So you're just recreating the emotion over and over and over, and then you get stuck in this loop. But the emotion itself isn't really lasting that long. These are all separate times that you're having the emotion over and over again. Thus, the techniques that people have come up with to be able to experience it and then let it go, the letting go techniques. And I find that using the breath can be very powerful in this, to like blow out and kind of blow the emotion out and let it go. And do a limited amount at a time. I think it's also important when doing those to not try and, okay, I'm going to just feel all this emotion right now and just eliminate it. For one thing, that means you're attaching to it hugely, which means you'll never get rid of it. But for another thing, when you're trying to do that just too much at once. Things take time. Like I said, they're like clouds. They have to go by at their own speed. You can't speed them up. You can't make it go faster. It's not going to go faster. And then it won't really work. You want to be relaxed and slowly let go of it and slowly let it pass and feel it in a gentle way and not try and make the whole thing go away and really not try and make it go away at all. Just try and sit through experiencing it and live with it in a calm, gentle way. I think that's the key word here with any kind of emotional letting go, is to be gentle about it. Calm and gentle. It's not always easy to be calm. Like, say you're afraid at the time or experiencing anxiety when you're doing it. Well, then it's going to be difficult to be calm, but you can still try and be gentle. And you can still do it slowly and do it a little bit at a time. Like, try to let go of 10% or 1%. Try and let go of a small amount of it and try and let go of the whole thing. Especially with old things. We have old buried things. I know I've done a lot of work myself and a lot with clients where we go back over the same thing several times and just do a little bit, chunks each week, maybe on a big thing from the past. It might take, several hours, who knows? That's the other thing with this. There's no real measurement for how long it's going to take or how much there is to each thing. I've had things release in a fraction of a second. Huge things, huge past things, just boom. It'll just on its own. That was its speed. I didn't force it. It just, I think because sometimes when we bury emotions, we don't bury all that much of it, but it's still there. We just bury the end part of it. Sometimes I've had to go over the same emotion and let it go for hours, and that week after week after week after week, hours and hours and hours and hours. And it doesn't seem to matter how big a thing it was, how big it seems to you. It just has its own thing. And every person is different. Every experience is different. Every emotion is different. I mean, really, I've begun to understand that each time I experience any emotion, it's a little bit different. You're not really repeating the same emotion again. You're having a different experience every time. It's subtle, but it's there if you pay attention to it. We go through this process by accepting it and by allowing these emotions to just live their own life. I found that I had the best success doing it, both with myself and with clients, by just letting it live its own life. Kind of thinking of the emotion as like the weather, like just letting the rain pass. You don't run outside and try and stop it. You might want to, but, or the storm, just let the storm do the storm's thing. So if you're feeling fear, let it do its fear thing. You want to pay attention to not reinitiating it yourself with your thoughts. But once the emotion is there, just let it do its thing. Another analogy I think of is it's like the emotions are like a stream going by you. And like if there were maybe through some leaves blew into the stream, and the leaves are the emotions, and they're just kind of drifting on by you. And then they will just drift on, and then they'll go their merry way. But what we do is we try and stop them. So we run out into the stream and try and grab them. And it's like if you grab the leaves and now it's in your hand, now you have it, So the way to not have it is to let it do its thing. If you try and stop it, now you have it. That is not, if you don't want to feel the fear, then don't go grabbing it and holding on to it tightly, because now you're going to keep feeling it until you let go of it. That's why it's called letting go. Just letting it do its own thing. It knows what it's doing, and it knows that it won't last for long, and it knows to just move on, So we don't want to stop it. But, it's flowing like electricity. It's you don't need to try and force it to do anything else. It's going to do what it does. It will be gone. It will flow through that wire and be gone. So We want to pay attention to that. Now, another part of the emotional letting go is to go somewhere. So this isn't part of all exercises, but I think it can be very helpful and useful. You're feeling the emotion, right? Then you let that emotion go. Then you decide what emotion you're going to go to. Like I said, trying to just destroy or get rid of that emotion. You're just feeling it, appreciating it, giving it respect, allowing it to exist, and then gently moving to the other one. That should give you a good start on being able to let go of your emotions, being able to create emotional freedom in your life, which should really open up the possibilities of achieving your goals and abundance and anything else you want to achieve, relationships. Some resources to check out. You can look at my YouTube channel. As I said, I've got a number of letting go techniques on there. You can also look at the Sedona method. They have some videos on YouTube. I know Hale Dwoskin has some videos up there. Check that out. They also have books. That's the Sedona method. Check out their website. And again, you can look at Letting Go, The Pathway of Surrender, the David R. Hawkins book as well, and look for that chart. I will try and include as many links to these items as I can. I hope you find these resources useful. Feel free to contact me anytime with any questions you may have. Like and subscribe so I can keep this podcast going. And thank you for watching and listening. Until next time.